I think we have to give at least 2 minutes to Canada, a country very dear to my
Yes,
heart.
exactly. Let's talk about
It
Mark
is. I'm one of
Carney.
the few.
Because
I'm
that's
one of the few
Mark
Americans who
Carney
knows
leading
where Canada
Liberals
is.
to a fourth consecutive victory. That is huge. So let me paint what's happened very quickly. Liberals won 169 out of 343 seats. They got 44% of the vote. The Conservatives won 144 seats, 41% of the vote. Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, lost his own seat. Now, for our American viewers and listeners, remember that Canada has a parliamentary system modeled after Westminster in the UK. I had to explain it to a young American tomorrow. So you don't just get to be a presidential candidate. You're leader of a party. Everyone fights their own parliamentary seat, and the party that gets the most seats, or the candidate who can command the majority support in parliament, gets to be prime minister. So it is somewhat important to get elected into parliament. Otherwise, you can't be the leader of the parliament if you're not even in parliament. So poor Pierre, a really bad day for him. What makes it worse is that this was a comeback victory. The Liberal Party has enjoyed a historic surge in polls since the start of the year. Under Mark Carney, a former governor of the Bank of England, former governor of the Bank of Canada, Liberals have beaten the Conservative Party. So he can send a thank you card to Donald Trump. Now, how did the fault lines break out? During the leadership campaign itself, and remember, Mark only announced he was running on 16 January, and he won all 343 electoral districts to become leader of the Liberal Party. So during the leadership campaign, what did he do? He repudiated some of Justin Trudeau's economic policies. He blamed Trudeau's profligate spending for Canada's vulnerability to American tariffs. He pitched himself as the best placed candidate to negotiate with Donald Trump and deal with Canada's perilous economic situation. The message, and obviously his impressive resume, resonated with many voters. What did Pierre do? Pierre was against immigration and inflation, and he was promising some sort of
But he
Canada
was in favor
first.
of apple pie and motherhood.
Yes, exactly. And shall we say he came unstuck? So more about Mark from Glenn, because both of them played ice hockey for Harvard.
That's right. His chief qualification for any position is that he was a Harvard hockey player, but he's a youth. He was 10 years after I was there, so I've never met him, unfortunately. Um, well, this may be one of the positive, perhaps the one positive thing that Donald Trump has achieved in his public life is that he brought Mark Carney to the premiership of Canada. Uh, I think the vote, to the extent that it has significance in a larger sense, it's certainly important for Canada, uh, is that it's an anti-Trump vote. The Conservatives and significant parts of the center of Canada, the inland of Canada, Alberta, Manitoba, so on, are Trumpian actually in their political outlooks. And this election was a repudiation of that. It was not only anger at Trump and fear of his imperialistic bombast rhetoric and so on, but a rejection of the resonance that has had within elements of Canadian society and politics. So that makes it significant for Canada, but also in a larger sense. Also, Canada is well, there's no other superpower-sized state other than the United States or China. The EU is a conglomeration, of course, a union. So Canada has as much influence as most any, I think, in the ranking of economic size. It's sixth or seventh or something like that, which makes it significant and a plausible standard bearer for how to coalesce and respond to the threats to all of the norms and practices posed by Donald Trump. Now, what concretely that means remains to be seen, but he at least is, for the moment, the apparent champion of how to respond to Donald Trump. Now, for the world, what does that imply? That the issues in Canada are similar to those of France, Germany, England, and other industrialized democracies. How do you address overregulation? This is the big argument always of conservatives. How do you address insufficiencies in defense spending? How do you develop a coherent foreign policy with allies that affirms these norms and yet somehow acts independently if necessary, as it appears it will be, to the United States?
Immigration.
And how do you affirm the and thank you. And the most important thing of all of this is a response. Carney's election, all the turmoil in Europe politically, the rise of the far rights in nation after nation, fundamentally is a response to the issue of a reaction to, if not a response to, the issue of immigration and social change. That underlays and explains really what's happened in the United States and in all of these other states. And so his election shows perhaps a hope for a response, but has this similar underlying causes, except, poor Canada is stuck having this troublesome behemoth on its southern border. And so it's obviously a response to that. How this will evolve is unknown, but Carney has as many qualifications as anyone, with the possible exception of political skills. But he's done well for the last 4 months in that regard.
So, Canada potentially offers hope for the Liberals that all is not lost. It is a huge boost to Mexico as well. Remember that the US has two major trading partners, Canada and Mexico, one to the north, one to the south. It doesn't have a Pakistan or China at its border, unlike India. So life is a lot easier. And now Claudia Sheinbaum, who's in some ways Marxist, but is a canny politician and a tough negotiator, will most likely team up with, almost inevitably team up with Mark Carney, who is a technocrat, who is an economist, who's a savvy character, who's acquitted himself fairly well, actually, when he was heading Bank of Canada. That was after the global financial crisis. And then he headed Bank of England during Brexit years, at a time when Bank of England got greater powers to oversee banks' capital requirements. So he is a bit of a policy wonk. And it remains to be seen now how both Sheinbaum and Carney negotiate with their national, I wouldn't say enemy, but national and ideological adversary. So, hey ho, there we go. The die is cast.
Everyone should play hockey and you'll have national success.
Exactly. On that note, we will see you next month. Thank you very much for watching this. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you are reading this, the summary on our website, then make sure you sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media if you're on social media. And remember that should you want advice on the political and geopolitical risk and the global economy, you have Glenn Carle, the senior partner of FOI, to turn to, and we will send you good stuff should you contact us. Bye for now.
Au revoir.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.